will be led by Mr. Carter. We'll be ready when you're ready.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'll look to my left and have roll call. Madam President, Secretary, please. Mr. Brooks. Mr. Carter.
Present.
Ms. Hill. Mr. Jones Salam. Ms. Martin. Present. Mrs. Washington. Present. Mrs. Peasley, present. Awesome. And what is the Baldwin Community Schools mission statement? Prepare students for the promise of tomorrow. And this meeting is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business. It's not to be considered a public community meeting. There is time for public participation during the meeting as indicated in the agenda, and there are 2 communication items from the community. So before we approve the consent agenda items, there are some changes to the agenda under discussion and action. So we'll have consent agenda items. A is the consideration of the resignation of Melissa Johnson, and then there's a B, C, and D, which we're going to consider a donation from Rotary in the amount of $2,000. Another donation from the Fremont Area Foundation of $1,500, and consider the contract from Mr. Dwayne Roberts, Baldwin Authority Director. Donation from Rotary, $2,000, donation from Fremont, $1,500, and then a contract for Mr. Roberts. All right, so we'll go down to F and the consent agenda items. So the approval of the agenda with the corrections, additions I just made. Approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of February 16th, 2021. Approval of the bills to be paid. General fund checks starting at 74602 to 74658. Food service fund account check number 5047 to 5049, and the Baldwin Promise Authority check 1327 to 1330. We should approve that. Make a motion. The motion by Ms. Martin. Second. Second by Ms. Peasky. All in favor? Aye. All right, presentations. We have a special education millage from the WSESD team. Welcome.
Thank you.
Did you want to be prelude or anything you wanted to?
Just appreciate them coming out tonight to talk to us a little bit about the village and get us up to speed. And we can sharing that with the community. So go ahead, you guys
Awesome.
have at it.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you very much for the time at the meeting. We certainly appreciate that. And as Rick mentioned, we thought that it would be appropriate to inform the board of Baldwin Community Schools and the staff here and anybody from the community who might be attending the meeting or listening online what the plan is for the special education village at West Shore ESD. My name is Jason Jeffrey. I'm the superintendent at West Shore ESD, and I know many folks in the room. It's nice to see you all again and meet some new folks as well. I'm here with Carrie Harry, who's at the computer, and Carrie is our assistant superintendent for business services. And Kim Teal is right here, our assistant super for special ed. And I know many of you know Kim because she's a proud former employee of Baldwin Community Schools. So we will be brief, just give you a little update on what's happening with the millage, and then some time for questions if you have them. So I think we can just go on to the next slide. But I guess first of all, to make you aware that on Tuesday, May 4th, voters in Lake, Mason, and Oceana counties we'll be asked to consider again the 1 mil renewal for special education programs and services. And that would be a renewal for 8 years. We're certainly proud of the partnership and relationship that we have with all the community schools and with the other 8 school districts that make up the West Shore ESD region. And I won't read the list to you. I think you're probably all aware who those school districts are. Few key points to share with you. The 1 mil renewal with today's property tax values would provide approximately $3.4 million annually, and that would be dedicated to funding special education programs, so things that happen in classrooms, and special education services. So, specific services that are provided to special education students, such as something like therapy. And we'll actually give you a rundown of exactly what all those things are in a couple minutes, but that's generally what the village would provide. A couple other key points to share with you. The first one is this is a renewal request. So if it's passed, it would not be a tax increase. It's the exact same levy that voters have approved 4 times in the last 30 years. And that's certainly something that we're appreciative of. Along with funding for special education programs and services, the renewal also provides a direct cash reimbursement to each of the 9 school districts. And that cash reimbursement helps offset the high cost of special education, which is not fully funded from the state or from the federal government. And we're actually going to go through those numbers. In fact, I think that might be the next slide. And I'm going to turn it over to Carrie, and she's going to provide an overview of the financials of what's connected to this millage. And then when Carrie's done, Kim will give us an overview of those programs and services. So it's all yours, Carrie.
Thank you, Dr. Jeffrey. So you can see on this pie chart, one of the things that the millage renewal, what it's done for us in the past 8 years is it's provided 47% of the 3.4 million. And we'll see the numbers in just a minute. Nearly half of it has gone to our local districts. You can also see then the other 3 sections of the pie chart on the left. Those are special education programs and services that Kim will talk about in a little bit, and then related transportation as well. So really the entire millage is, directly impacting each of our local school districts. So this is, what that breakdown looks like of the reimbursements to the local districts. Remember, half of that millage. So the 8-year annual range, it's varied each year. And part of the reason why it varies is because it's based upon special education student counts. And in Baldwin for the current year, that reimbursement of about $128,000, that reimbursement is based upon approximately 140 special education students. So you can see then for the 8-year total at the top in yellow that it's been almost or a little over $1 million that has been a direct cash reimbursement to Baldwin schools. And so what this does is, as Dr. Jeffrey said, it helps supplement the federal and state reimbursement, which is about 30% of the cost of special education students. This adds, probably about $800 more per student to that reimbursement, but still comes nowhere near, funding that full amount of special education. But what it does is it provides relief to your general fund so that you can spend those funds on something else. So, adding $1 million essentially to, to the Baldwin bank account so that you can spend that $1 million on other educational initiatives. And so if you look at the total in the bottom far right column, $13.3 million. So that's the 8-year total of half of this millage that has been, directly cash reimbursements to our local school districts. And now I'm going to turn it over to Kim so she can talk about programs and services.
So a little bit about special education. So there's lots of state rules and federal regulations about what is required. And one of those requirements is a continuum of programs and services. So the ESD and Baldwin schools and the other local districts, we all work together to meet those requirements. And we'll get into that a little bit more in these next slides. So one of the requirements is resident districts are responsible for special education for birth through 26 years old. And you're used to seeing preschool to 12th grade here, but there are ESD service providers who go out into the homes of children who are in early on. And then we do have children who attend our programs through age 26. 1,400 students across the 3 counties, that's 1 in 6 children. And within Baldwin, within your resident district boundaries, you have 150 students who have a disability. So to qualify for special ed, you need to meet the criteria of one of the 13 disability categories that are listed up here. And in Baldwin, just so you know, you have 40 students with a learning disability and 25 students with a cognitive impairment. And then the other categories are represented in smaller numbers. ESD operates 16 programs. These are the names of them. And we have an ECSD program here at Baldwin Elementary. And the ESD provides these special education services, either in the home setting, the school setting, sometimes a community setting, and you have about 100 students who receive at least one of these services.
Okay, I think it's my turn, and this is just sort of the recap slide before we get into questions if you have them. But again, just a reminder, Tuesday, May 4th is the day that the vote will happen, and that will be anyone who chooses to vote across the 3 counties. If passed, the renewal will stand for 8 years. And we certainly appreciate you taking the time to consider this information. And again, just another reminder, not an increase. The request is simply the same request that has occurred 4 times in the last 30 years, and thankfully has been previously supported. So, if there are questions, we would certainly want to try to answer those. And if questions come up later, certainly please work through Rick, and we'll try to get you or contact any of us directly and try to get you an answer for that. And probably should also, since you were kind enough to let us come to the meeting, we should probably also give Rick a chance if you'd like to make any comments about this as well. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, thanks for coming, it's very helpful to our budget, so when we get the updated flyers and information, we'll be glad to share those and get the information out.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions or comments? Well, I truly appreciate you all coming tonight to make us aware that this is out there so that we'll be able to talk to our local community to let them know it is a renewal, that this has passed before, and how much it saves our district to be able, and then the number of students in our district. So out of that 140 or that 150, that does include those preschool we talked about, or those early on,
Right.
and those.
So
Over
150
18.
is the 0 to 26. So they might be in the home setting, or they might attend a program outside of this building.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's good information, because, the community may just think of those children that are just in the building, but there are kids at home and those who have already graduated from our institution. So, okay, great.
And I probably should have mentioned on the cover slide, I know 2 out of the 3 students that were in the picture are what we would consider to be Baldwin students that have attended here in the preschool program or community members. I'm right on that, Kim, because I'm going by memory.
Yeah. For most part.
Awesome. Well, thank you. It's been a great partnership, and we will be able to share this information with our community, so they'll know to get out and vote.
Well, thank you again. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Washington.
And have a nice night, everybody.
Thank you.
Slip out when you go out with your meetings. And Char, I will come with appropriate landers next time.
I'm scared, Carrie. You were already ready. Have at it, sir.
Well, thank you for having us tonight. Nate and I are going to go over a system we're very excited about here in the high school. We have started what's called EWIMS in the high school. The EWIMS program, let's see here, is Early Warning and Intervention and Monitoring System. This program has been rolled out nationally in different schools. It basically supports students. What we want to look at is the ABCs, attendance, behavior, and course performance. And when you look at attendance, behavior, and course performance, there's certain predictors for students of whether they will drop out or whether they'll be successful. Within attendance, if students are gone a certain amount of days, I think it's like 5 or 6 days in the school year, their chances of dropping out are a lot greater. If they have 2 or more Fs in basically core classes, it also increases their dropout predictors. And then also with behavior, if they have a certain amount of write-ups, it's also a predictor that they will be not able to graduate when it comes time. And so what we want to do here in Baldwin, we want to bring this program in and make sure that we're doing what we need for our students to basically start to lessen the chances that our students will not graduate in the end of their senior year. If you look at why we're looking at EWIMS, the stakeholder requests, basically the staff and the administration were looking at, we need to do something for these students that are struggling with attendance and are looking, with a number of problems with their grades and different skills that they're missing. And so we were looking for that. The board, when we come before you guys with, kids that are kind of at their last end with a suspension or expulsion, a lot of times you ask, what have you guys done for this student? And that's something that we need to show to you of what have we tried with this student. And so this provides a program to get that documentation of, we've tried all these things with this student, and hopefully that'll reduce the number that are coming to you guys for, any sort of disciplinary actions. Also, for school improvement, the school improvement process is now looking at continuous improvement. In the past, when you're filling out the school improvement plans, it's kind of a year-to-year thing. With continuous improvement, they want to have continuous programs and changes to the programs each year. And this program does that and looks at, are things working? Can we adjust? How are we going to make this better every year? So it's an ongoing process. And then also with the COVID-related issues with academics and attendance, and watching some of our kids fall behind because of not showing up, not taking part in things, and then also kind of dropping in skill levels. We want to make sure that we have something to help figure out interventions to get these kids back up to speed. Baldwin has presented the opportunity to select EWIMS as part of our partnership, the Blueprint program. And so we've been coached by Lisa Francisco on implementing the program. Now, national studies and independent research have demonstrated the program's success. It's been studied through Johns Hopkins University, out in Philadelphia, Chicago, a variety of schools nationwide, both rural and urban. And it's demonstrated success in curbing the dropout rates and increasing achievement. Basically, the MDE's placed a lot of money behind the program, and Nate and I went through and with Lisa and did a hexagon tool, which looked at the capability of our district to use EWIMS, and we found that it would fit in well with our current programming. We also followed up with Shiawassee ISD and then also with Manistee Public Schools as they have implemented EWIMS and have seen some success with the program. So we wanted to talk to other schools that have used it. How does it work? Basically, we collect information on the students for the 3 core areas. We look at the students, and there's certain thresholds that are set, and so it flags those students. So those students that are flagged, then the team meets and decides any sort of interventions, and that can be a whole school intervention if we see something that's wrong across a number of kids, or if it's individual kids, the team meets to create these interventions so that we can kind of customize the interventions to the student. The idea of this program is that it's ongoing, and so there's basically a continuation and modification, and then once the kid reaches a certain point, then we can terminate if the kids reach the success, or if the program's not working for the kid, we can also terminate the intervention. And then it focuses on having fidelity checks and making sure that teachers and staff are doing what they need to do in order to implement the program. So not just, here's the program and the student has to swim for themselves and hope that all the teachers are on board with this. It looks and has fidelity checks to make sure that the staff is following through on the interventions. The EWIMS data, like I said, it's collected for the 3 areas. The data is analyzed, and the agreed upon thresholds are what trigger the flags for the students. The identified and flagged students, basically the team meets to decide the intervention level, tier 1 for all students, tier 2 to a limited group of students, or tier 3 for an intensive intervention for a single student or a small number. And the team researches interventions to be implemented for the flagged students. So what we've been doing, we have a number of resources for interventions. And then also when we talk to Manistee and some of the other schools, pulling from other people's expertise that have done this before, so that we have interventions that we can try and work with our kids. And so it's not just shoehorning somebody into an intervention that may or may not work. We want to find the intervention that works with our students. The EWIMS team basically selects the intervention. The needs are listed by the requested team, and we go to the administration, and the administration has agreed that the EWIMS team can ask for resources and support, and they will provide. And also, the staff is responsible for implementing the interventions and are trained and supported through this process. We don't want to leave them hanging. So we want to make sure that they're supported so they know how to give the interventions when they're requested. The intervention reviews, basically we'll go through periodically and look at the data and collect and analyze it, and then decide the effectiveness of it, and then decide whether to continue the intervention, modify it, or terminate it. What EWIMS is not is, it's not a classification-based system. A lot of your interventions are based on its classifications, whether it's special ed or a certain, socioeconomic or at-risk. The at-risk programs are usually identified by a reading level or, lunch status or different things. This purely goes by the ABCs of attendance, behavior, and then course performance. So it opens up some of those kids that may be forgotten in the back of the classroom that are throwing flags that are, not necessarily identified through other sources. And this also cuts down. It is a very fair system because you don't have teachers doing referrals on this. One of the things with the referral process is that teachers will sometimes have a heart for a student and send in a referral, and they may ignore somebody else in the back, absentmindedly, not thinking about that. And so we miss kids. And so this program will actually be looking across and just looking at the data to identify our students. EWIMS is not a set it and forget it tool. It's not something that basically you put the intervention in and we don't do anything with it. It's something that we'll be looking at the process and making sure that things are working. And if it's not working, we change it. It's not a standalone team. We are going to be rotating members of the staff through it as we move on. We want to make sure that every staff member has time on the team and understands the intervention process. And so if we have teachers that move on, retire or whatnot, we have people to replace them on the team. So this is an ongoing team. And we don't lose the expertise with, the loss of a staff member. The EWIMS team members do not stay the same. Basically, we want to make sure we do have fresh people each year.
Currently, our EWIMS team, or myself and Stuart, we're the leads on this. He's taking the attendance side, I'm taking the behavior side. We have 6 teachers right now currently on the team. They range from middle school teachers to high school teachers. We want to have teachers on each level that know these kids. When we get them into the meeting, we're able to apply the right intervention to them. Mr. Cornwell, the principal, obviously is helping oversee what we're doing. As Stuart mentioned earlier, Lisa Francisco, she's our partner, she's our coach. She brought this to us and she's coaching us through it. She's bringing us the trainings. She's helping us get through this process. And our champion, our EWIMS champion is Mary Martin. She's agreed to do that for us. That way we keep communication lines open through all levels of the school district. What's being done currently? The implementation, we've done extensive training, several hours, even before school, even before we got back in person. We've done countless hours, I don't even know.
3 months process so far.
Yeah, so that's how deep we are into this. It's a pilot program. We're waiting on the tool. We're going to pilot a tool to gather data to try to make it more efficient for us when that becomes available. So we're going to end up being the pilot, one of the pilot schools for that. We, as Stuart said earlier, we've met with Shiawassee and Manistee, other places that have used this and have had some success, but they've also had some struggles. So that was our biggest question when we met with them. What struggles did you have? Right. So they can help us get through those struggles before we reach those struggles. We're practicing. We're meeting 2 times a week, every week in the morning from 7:45 to 8:25. So we are going over data, touching base, seeing what new information is there, what do we need to update each other on, and the implementation of the first intervention is based on data, like Stuart stated earlier.
So one of the things with the pilot program that we'll be doing with the state is that it's going to pull data from our Swiss system, which is our behavior system, and then it's automatically going to pull attendance and grade information from Tower School. And so we won't, right now, we're having to pull it ourselves and practice how we're pulling it. But the program was originally supposed to be ready in March. It's now backed off with COVID till probably August, September. But it will generate a sheet that will have students that are red flagged for us based on the categories. So what we've done currently, as we've come out of the training process of this, we've gone to attempting to do our first interventions and our first passes of data to practice. So we used attendance data that we had from the fall of 2019, which is the last we were in school with students, that we had solid attendance data, because the data for the online for the spring, basically they only had to contact 2 contacts a week. And so we wanted to use data that would be solid data. So we used the fall of 2019 to identify 29 junior high and high school students with high absentee rates. And what we wanted to do with that is find something. We knew that we were approaching March 1st to come back in session. And we wanted to make sure that these students that had high rates of absenteeism, a lot of times it takes them a little bit to get going, so they miss the first few days of school, and it was so important to get them back in on March 1st. We wanted to make sure that they were here for that first day of school and for that week. So we generated lists of these students for the parapros and had them call students on the week before school started to give them a welcome back, a positive welcome back that, hey, we missed you, we want you to come back to school on March 1st, and we're looking forward to having you here. And when we did that, we ended up, the students that we weren't able to get a hold of, 63% of their attendance was 63% that week. We had left 5 voicemail messages. For those students that were left a voicemail message, they had 100% attendance that week. For the parents that were directly phone contacted, we had one that was directly phone contacted. They had 100% attendance. The students that we asked the parapros if they could speak to the student directly to please speak to that student directly because we wanted that personal contact. They had 97% attendance that first week of school. And then, so between all forms of contact with those students, it was 98%. So the total intervention of the 19 kids that were actually showing up face-to-face was 91% attendance. So we were kind of excited about those results for that week, because a lot of times it's a struggle for several of them that were on the list to get here to school for those first weeks of school. So it was a worthwhile effort.
But as Stuart stated on the 2 slides previous, we identified 29 students that were having attendance issues in the fall of last year. Of those 29 students, we found out that 9 of those students missed most of their time because of out-of-school suspension. Whether it was for, the common thing that we found out of those 9 students was physical aggression or fighting. Okay, so obviously that was a big issue for us last year when it came to our youth. So what we wanted to do, what we did was started an anger management critical thinking group that I run with those 9 students. We do it 2 times a week in the morning during first hour, which is our advisory hour. I try to catch them Monday morning, first day after the weekend, and then Thursday morning, the first day after the Wednesday at home. That's the goal, to try to catch them to see how their weekend was or how that day off was. And we can work through these skills, work through these triggers that they're having and how they're addressing them. So out of the 29 students, we had 9 of those students that we are aggressively getting after right now, and we're doing well with that. Right now, the students that come to the group, there have been some that have missed it, whether the bus was late, because it is first hour when we get there. Some buses, I try to start right at 9:30. Typically, I give them about 5 minutes, because the first hour is only 33 minutes long, I think it is. But it's advisory, so it's not a full option, it's not a full class period, so we have limited time to get through the workbook that I have. We are, out of the 9 students that come, we've had a few miss a few sessions, so they're 1 or 2 sessions behind. But everyone has been engaged. These students are students that don't like to tell their business to anyone. These students are students that you would assume don't have many friends because of how they behave, how they carry themselves. These students are students that are not passing classes, don't like to participate in class. But these students are participating in this class. They read when I ask them to read. They write, they share when I ask them to share. I'm also completing a workbook with them so I can share my story with them as we go through it, let them know that we're all here. Okay, of those 9, only 3 of them have referrals, period, right now in the first 2.5 weeks. As of before yesterday, it was only 1. Out of those 3 that have referrals, only 1 has a verbally assaultive referral. No one has a physically assaultive referral in the first 2.5 weeks so far. So the 1 individual that does have the verbally assaultive referral, she's only been present for 2 of the 5 sessions thus far. Whether she's missed school or her bus was late, she hasn't been in all 5 sessions. EWIM's future, we're practicing every day, you know, whether we're in person, or with the virtual students, we're getting additional data through behaviorally through the Swiss system as referrals come in. I'm able to generate a report for what the referral is for, where the referral is at, who is getting a referral. So we're able to break down the data that way. We are scheduling fidelity reviews and planning for the next year, because when the break comes, we want to be able to have a new intervention for the students from the first 3 weeks that have triggered us through the data, not based off of, like Stuart said earlier, we're not doing teacher referrals. We want to look at the data after the first 3 weeks, get another intervention put in place so we can be proactive after spring break. Now, it's kind of reactive to the first 3 weeks, but the intervention that we'll put into place for behavior-wise anyway will be proactive to the rest of the school year. The early warning data tool will be piloted, as we talked about earlier. We're really looking forward to that because right now, just pulling data from these other sites is a lot of work. And it gets kind of tedious. The new staff, we are going to get them involved as well. They obviously need to be caught up with all of our programming that we're doing, whether it's the Swiss system, the Power School system, the new data tool that may come. But they are going to be caught up to speed so that way, like Stuart stated earlier, if someone leaves, they can slide right in seamlessly and we can keep this thing moving.
We're looking at right now with attendance, having, when we come back in April, having staff for students that miss 2 consecutive days or miss 2 days in a week, having staff contacting those students again with welcoming calls, trying to get them to make sure that they know that there's caring adults that want them back at school, and looking at some ways to try to kind of curb some of the attendance issues that we've been seeing. One of the things that we really liked when we talked to Manistee was their motto of get going, get better. When they first implemented the program, they basically ran into it head first, and they said that, you know, we need to get this moving, this program moving, our kids need this, and we're gonna make some mistakes as we go, and we just need to get better every time. And it's been a 3-year process for Manistee to get to where they think they actually are really running well. And so when we look at them, you know, that's something with this process. We saw an opportunity back in December when we first started doing all the training, and January and February, and then all of a sudden we got to March 1st, and it's like we got to hit the road, and we're trying the interventions. And so, you know, we're adding, right now we're looking at attendance and behavior. We're going to start adding course performance and start adding things in. And as the crew gets better, the team gets better with this, we're looking for really exciting things to happen with this and to really support our kids. Because it's basically all about the students and the needs that they have and trying to get them the supports they need in order to be successful and to walk across that stage and, you know, basically access the promise. So, does anybody have any questions?
Is there any questions or comments?
Great.
Actually, I wrote down a lot, and I've heard this presentation like 3 times, but I still have, like, I mean, there's still things that I see and come up, and you kind of, you know, answered about the fidelity checks. You said you're just starting that cycle. So is the team doing the fidelity checks, or are you gonna have like admin on the outside to kind of have that second look?
Garth is kind of a part of the team, and so even though we're team leaders, so one of the reasons we're team leaders is administrations change. And so we want to have staff that's team leaders that, you know, we've got 2 of us, so if there's ever something, you know, we always have people that are there, so we want to make sure, and then that removes the principal from having to do 1 more committee meeting. It kind of keeps us there, so that's definitely something, you know, as we move forward, you know, we are kind of excited about having the team structure we do, so.
Awesome, and I do like the fact that you rotate new members, thank you, in and out. Focus, and I'm glad that you did hit on that. There were no referrals, because I was going to ask you to make sure that you mentioned that, because, you know, we're so used to hearing things happening on referrals, but when you said that before, when I heard the presentation last week, I, I really did appreciate that for the idea of what you just said earlier about sometimes we do miss those students, right? So I like that part. And the other part is, you hit it on the head, you talked about those long-term suspensions. We see those kids, we always have all these questions about, what did we do? And now we have, data that will help us to identify these kids long before we even maybe see any behavior problem. We can see it in the attendance or even in the coursework. And then as we talked about, I was just here thinking about all of the initiatives and all this awesome stuff that we're doing and just how all of this sits, because I'm visual, so I'm trying to look at this whole continuum, right? And so when you talked about those 9 students and then only 3 had referrals, but 1 was for a verbal assault. So in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, that's like, that could be like a restorative thing because whoever the person verbally assaulted, will be a conversation there. So this is just like so super that, from a board level, they were actually able to see, like, okay, here's WIMS, EWIMS, and then, oh, look how restorative practice can fit right inside here. All the things that we're doing as a building block and everything is so student focused that it is just so encouraging to be able to be here at this.
And to comment on that, they do go hand in hand because we already had a restorative circle with a group of young ladies and a group of teachers that struggled the first week and a half together. So, and honestly, it was pretty productive considering the group of students we had. We actually had one student thank us for allowing them to speak because they felt like they were hurt. The student that said that has now stuck up for herself, and we moved her sections of class because she didn't want to hang with that group of girls anymore. So kids are starting to realize, certain things that they didn't realize before, whether it's people they're hanging out with or the role that the teacher is really playing, not the role that they think the teacher is playing.
And then the one last question, I'm gonna let you gentlemen go, is about the interventions. So are those all interventions coming from inside? Are those interventions that we would utilize maybe community partners as well?
So basically the interventions, we have kind of an open playbook.
Okay.
We are receiving stuff from Manistee of stuff they've done before that's worked for them. And one of the things we liked about Manistee is they have a very diverse community where they're at with Native American and they have a lot of similar characteristics as far as socioeconomic and stuff to our district. And so some of their interventions looked really good to us. And so we're looking at some of their interventions. There's also a bunch of different ones that, because this is a national program, there's a lot out there.
Gotcha.
And so we're looking at those and we're looking to see what we can do to customize them to our community. And there are ones that use and utilize the community programming and community groups that we hope to, as we get better here, we're hoping to start doing that. But before we get too many people involved, we want to make sure we know what we're doing first.
Well, I'll tell you, like I said, this is like my 3rd time hearing this presentation, and every time it has gotten better. So, so yeah, you guys are doing a great job. So thank you. Anybody else have any questions or comments?
On the packet that we just gave you, on the last page of that, there's a YouTube video that actually has, they just released it, that has a lot more information on UWIMS if you feel you want to watch any more on UWIMS. So, thank you so much for letting me present.
Thank you. Good stuff there.
Is that what we had before? Did we have the picture of everybody? Was that, was the whole YouTube up there or just that last time?
I'm sorry.
I just want to make, I just want to make sure I didn't mess anything up. I'm hoping it's
no.
still going out to YouTube, so.
Oh, I hope so. Not sure what calls.
It didn't go, so what did I do?
You think we're not streaming right now?
We are streaming, this didn't show up there though, so I'm trying to figure out why.
Just share it through Google Meet.
Doesn't have to go through there. Earlier there was a percent button down.
Yeah, they were presenting online.
Yeah. See, I did that, but it didn't show up. Are you on the YouTube?
Yeah. Not there yet.
Hmm?
I think it just stopped.
So do I go to the Google Meet or how do I do that? Okay. Can't get back to the Google Meet. Here, click on this. I can't get it to go to the Meet.
Struggling with an on-map.
Huh?
Struggling with an on-map.
Yeah, I think I am.
It's gonna be the way on the left side.
Left side, okay.
Yep.
Also, what you'll do is you'll
It's not giving me a choice.
share.
Is that it?
Yeah. Hit that.
All right.
And then I think you'll have to open. No, you
Go back to it
go
then?
back to that.
All right.
Okay.
So is that it? Nope, I'm trying to show my reconfirmation hearing. All right, I'm hitting present now. A window, right? But it's not, it doesn't give me. Okay. And then go back.
Go share. You can share screen now.
How about that? Man,
Go back to where all of us were on there.
this is embarrassing.
Did you hit that share button right there? Mm-hmm.
I think I'm already sharing. I'm in Google Meet. I went to present now. I went to window. I've got the window that shows the meet and then a blank window that says Baldwin Community Schools. So do I, because if I go to the reconfirmation hearing, it doesn't become a choice.
So that.
Okay. How about now? I really think that's what I tried to do, but clearly I didn't. Did I just knock it out of there? Well, now I'm gonna go really fast. So we have to do the reconfirmation hearing every month. You guys have heard that spiel every single month. Oh, great. So we have to reconfirm how instruction is going to be delivered. We have to take public comments, and we have to review the weekly 2-week interaction rates. So I will tell you that we are going to review the February rates, which were our last month that we were entirely virtual. So going forward, we have to figure out how we share this data because we've got students who are
Right.
remote right now. We have students who are in school. So we have to figure out how to appropriately and accurately share information. So this is updated to talk about what it's going to be like going forward. But the data that we will look at on the next slide is February rates, which again, we're entirely remote. So very much in line with what we've seen much of the year. But again, next month, we have to determine exactly how to present this. So our recommendations, a little simpler this month than we've had in the last several months. We've discussed last week how face-to-face has gone and got some pretty good feedback from the DNT. Things seem to be going pretty well. So we're excited about that. We will meet again on April 20th to do another reconfirmation. Again, we're trying to figure out how that data has to look next month. And our recommendation this month is to continue our course of action. We have about 20% of students who are remote right now. We have 80% who are on campus. So presentation actually took less time than it did to set it up. So any questions, comments, thoughts?
How many students, do you know how many students we lost during the transition from going to remote from our district?
You mean when we went remote? Our numbers did go down when we stayed remote. We didn't have anybody tell us specifically that they were leaving because we were remote. But now that we've been back in, we have seen the numbers go back up. And I think both principals may have put some of that data in their principal update, and they can probably address that a little bit. But we did see a dip. Never had anybody say we're leaving totally because you are remote. But now that we're back, we're seeing those numbers go back up. And to add to your question, we just met today with Susan Mercer, who is our Pathways to Potential person in our partnership with DHS. And one of her specific roles is to monitor K-5 attendance, and she'll do that on a monthly basis and share some thoughts with us as we go. But we got with her today because we were talking about something called a 10-day drop, and we just got into some data for kids who just don't show up, and they're not responding to phone calls, to emails, to home visits. They just don't respond, and then we get to the point. Usually it's more than 10 days, but it's officially 10 days where we end up dropping them from the rolls. So we just sat with her and said, what can we do? How can we incentivize people to get their kids in school? Because this is where we want them to be. So she's gonna specifically track about 8 students whose names we gave her, who we've had a really hard time getting a hold of. So we're trying hard to reach out to everybody and get everybody in school. But again, to answer your question directly, yeah, we saw the numbers start to go back up now that we've been back. We did see them drop. But on a side note, in Michigan, there are 53,000 students who nobody seems to know where they are. So, I mean, that is a mind-blowing number, but they've studied this and they're trying to figure out where people are, and some people just disappeared. Hopefully they'll show back up, but it's just a crazy number, and that's Michigan alone. So you think of the whole nation, it's scary what's happened in the last year. So, excellent question. All right, let me see if I can even close this thing now.
Thank you for that report and bringing that information to us, and we'll be looking forward to doing it again in April. Okay, principal report.
I think that concludes our presentation.
All right. Sure.
So, kind of a busy month, right? With kids in the building. I kind of broke things down into, we're trying to be consistent in how we break down this information to you. But from a results aspect, or point of view, last month we looked at a bunch of NWEA data, right? We talked about, we have this data, now what? And so just to kind of continue with that, I just wanted to let you know that we utilize that NWEA data in a couple of different manners. First, we had our committees utilize that information to start talking about, okay, here's where our gaps are. How do we start to close those gaps? And so we had our ELA committee and our mathematics committee start to talk about different ways that we can start looking at it both building wide to reduce those gaps, and then also, individually or interventions, right, for specific students. And so they've been working hard in those committees to kind of identify and then begin the process of implementing those reading and math strategies, building wide to increase that student growth level. They met again today, and math is looking at specific math engagement strategies. We've actually, they're going to start in April. Each of our BCS meetings once a month, they're going to look at a specific math strategy that all teachers can use in their classroom. And then the idea is they'll study that in BCS on Tuesday, they'll implement that throughout the week, and then that next week they'll revisit how did it go, right? And we're looking at those, and we're actually partnering with Meg Brown from West Shore ESD in that process. She's going to be leading us through a book study around that, and it's tied directly to our ADMR, which a lot of our teachers have gone through that training, right? And so we're building on some a program that our teachers have already been using, but it hasn't necessarily gone to scale. And this is a way of taking it to scale, so we're seeing it across our entire building here at the elementary. From a reading standpoint, what we're looking at is really getting more time in books, right? How do we get more time during the day into actual books and have the students reading? And so what we've done a couple of things. Teachers are looking for an opportunity to have students, let's spend an extra 10 minutes in every day where we just allow kids to read every day. And then we're also utilizing our specials classes on Fridays are doing a drop everything and read. So instead of the kids going to the regular specials on Fridays, right, they're coming in and they're coming with a book in hand and they're doing some reading silently, but then they're also having that teacher read to them and do that. And so again, we're trying to get more time on the page to increase that accessibility to books. And then we are also looking at, and they made the recommendation today for a number of different ways to get books into students' hands, right? And so they're investigating different resources so that we can get books in kids' hands for when they go home, because we know that if they have that opportunity to do that at home, they need to have books to do that. So they're investigating that piece. Additionally, we utilize that same data to identify students who might need that additional reading instruction. And so what we looked at is we had our async Wednesdays, right? So we meet Monday and Tuesday with all students in the building. On Wednesday, it's an async day, so students are working from home or virtually. And then Thursday and Friday, they return. On Wednesday, we are utilizing that time to bring in small groups of students. And so we have students that come in for about an hour and a half, a small group of students, I think we have about 35, 40 that come in the morning, and then they're here for an hour and a half working with our interventionists and our paraprofessionals, specifically around reading instruction. And then we have another group that comes in the afternoon. So we have two groups coming in. We're servicing about 60 to 65 students during the day that have been identified that just need that extra step, and that more individual time. And that's something that we've seen over and over again is when we can get kids in those smaller groups or in those individual settings, they make greater strides in shorter amount of time because they have that personal instruction. So again, taking that NWA data, doing something with it, putting it into an action. The processes, in February, administration and staff really worked at, bringing kids back into the building. We talked about our entry procedures, our exit procedures, our breakfast, our lunch, our cleaning procedures, our recess procedures. We were very procedure heavy. But I think the neat thing is, then the kids come in, right? And you have to adjust, right? It's really important that you make those adjustments. We have smoothed out, Tim, you can speak a little bit to this, how we do lunch and breakfast in the morning. We've smoothed out how we have kids enter and exit the building in a safe and orderly manner. You know, we've got our kids coming into the building now, off the buses, through the breakfast line, into the classroom, and getting instruction within about 14 minutes.
Which was probably more than half.
Yeah.
The first couple days.
Yeah, and just by looking at that, evaluating and looking at, okay, what adjustments do we need to make this happen smoother? You know, yeah, exit procedures is another example. You know, the first day we had a line all the way down the road, you know, and I'm sure there was a lot of frustrated parents. But we've got that down to about 15 minutes as well. You know, kids are out the door by 45.
7 minutes today.
7 minutes.
Buses pulled out 7 minutes today.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting very, very good at this, and the nice thing is it's very organized. We're door-to-door service for our little ones, right? From the car to the building, from the building to the car, so we know who they're leaving with, and we've got a check-in procedure.
I think that's the most fun data point we have is a gentleman who heckled us on day one. Yeah, who heckled us good hearted, within a week sent Mr. Mangum a thank you letter.
So we're getting better. You know, we're continuing to reevaluate. We've made some adjustments this morning on some different things, and we'll continue to do so. But really just tightening up those procedures and making sure that we're really refining things for that increased efficiency and safety. That's really the focus that they're really focusing on here. From a system standpoint, Rick alluded to this. We have a new person in the building, Susan Mercer. She is our success coach for the Pathways to Potential Attendant Support Program, and she started with us on February 22nd. She's here in a support role to address any barriers that families face getting their students to school. And she's here on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays from 7 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. each day. And she's working and coordinating with Tim. Actually, I'll just talk a little bit about that too, Tim. They're working in tandem with each other, right? Tim is our student support specialist. He works with the kids here in the building. But the nice thing is Susan works with our families.
Yes.
And so now we've got that communication going and we're starting to be able to do things that we weren't able to do before because we have that communication right here in the building. I'll let you chat a little bit.
Well, a good example is that when I'm working with a handful of families that I can't make really good contact with, my first step is to talk to Ms. Mercer. And her office is now located in our office. It's just my own office. So a good example happened the first week she worked with us. We had a new family with a lot of needs. I was able to make physical contact. I could go to the door and introduce myself. We couldn't get the kids engaged. I reached out to Ms. Mercer. She could look into her casework and find ways to actually help some of the physical needs of the family to get them to school. And then she stays in touch with me as we make progress in school. I think another good example was a first set of students we painstakingly dropped. Most of them we got back within a week. We took back group of students and gave them right to Ms. Mercer so she could look into what services they qualify for, and she could also reach out to her colleagues who have worked with those families in the past.
Yeah, I think that really the thought process here is if we help the family, we help the student. And we get them going. And that's an incredibly important piece, and I think this is a game changer for us, in my opinion. This is something that we've been working toward for a number of years, and we're 3 weeks into it, and we're seeing the benefits already.
And again, a good example that Mr. Mangum helped us with this is Ms. Mercer. When we talked about one particular family, she made sure their LP tank was filled. Because their issue was the students had to be in another home and couldn't get to school because their home was cold. She filled that and made sure that tank was, we had them the next day in school.
So additionally, the One Systems is, we were approached by the MySTEM Region 9, which is West Shore ESD is part of this, as well as we are, to host Camp Invention, which is a STEM camp this summer. And so we will be hosting between June 21st and June 25th, Camp Invention, which is a STEM camp, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics camp. And we will be able to offer that free of charge for 45 elementary students.
Awesome.
This is going to be, something pretty cool. It's very hands-on, inquiry-based instruction. We have one of our teachers here, Ms. Holton, just finished her master's in STEM, so she's really looking forward to this. And then this, along with the fact that we are, in our science lab, we are creating a STEM lab, and have some new resources that we're gonna be able to utilize. But we see this as kind of kicking that off, and so we'll be able to do a lot more hands-on things with our kids here in the upcoming year. And then finally, leadership and capacity, throughout February and March, staff continue to build their competencies and shared leadership, really what I talked about earlier in those committees, right? Those committees are working every week to look at how we improve this building on a continuous basis, right? And so today, talking to them, the things that they identified were specific resource needs that they had, as well as identifying some data points that we'll hopefully be able to share with you guys at the next board meeting, right? They're collecting data about some things that they have implemented. And so those are running pretty smoothly now. We have 3 lead teachers that are facilitating those, and then I kind of hop into one each week. But it's been really interesting to watch how they've grown into those leadership roles. Basically, I don't even have to do the agendas anymore. They're running with it. So that's what we want. We want to see that shared leadership across the board. So really excited about how that's turning out. Any questions that you have for me? Here at the elementary building?
Just one, and you don't have to answer it because it'll probably be enough 30 minutes. You probably don't have that data with you, but you mentioned, I think it was last month's meeting, when we looked at the spring data and realized that 3rd grade had done something awesome.
Yeah.
And I know you said you were going to get in committees and start to look at that. So next month, can you remember to just kind of let us know what was happening in there?
Yeah, I
That
can
helped
allude to a
graders?
couple of pieces that we think are helpful there. One, that group was also that group of students that worked all summer together in that 3rd grade academy, right? So they had already established relationships with those teachers and had been online with those teachers all summer long. So they had kind of a 6-week jump start. They had relationships with those teachers right away. Those teachers were also able to start their small group and individual groups much earlier because they had those relationships with those kids. They already knew where they were at. And so I feel like they had, about a 6-week head start than everybody else because of that program. Now that's one thing, I can't prove it yet.
Right,
But
right.
it's something that
Right.
we saw and we felt was a real indicator of why we saw those numbers.
Yeah, that was the only thing. I know you had mentioned that, and I was just wondering what your team found out about that, so.
Absolutely.
Mrs. Lang, do you want to talk a little bit more about the relationship, some of the things we talked about today with some of the things you observed in those classrooms and just, the interactions between students and teachers? The 3rd grade classrooms?
Yeah.
Specifically about how they set things up for relaxing education.
Yeah, they are a very relational group.
3rd grade?
Yeah, and I think that's where their focus is at. And I think, that's something that I've noticed. They are very, very even keeled. They're never too high, never too low. It's just very even keeled. Their focus, and you've been in classrooms as well. The emphasis is on the relationship with the student, right? And building that relationship with that student then translates to, I want to do well for you, I trust you.
Right,
And
right.
then we get the results that we're striving for. I think it's a key piece there. And it should be everywhere.
Yeah, let's start somewhere. All right, awesome, thank you. All right, Mr. Cornwell?
So what Mr. Mangum said. Stole my thunder. Heard down the free.
I'm gonna have you to go first next
That's all
time.
right. So I was going through and I was gonna follow the same script, the process and stuff and results. I'm gonna flip it a little though. The results that I want to talk about tonight is what we talked about with the Pathways to Potential. We mentioned we talked to Susan Mercer this morning. I gave her 8 names of students that we were at about 15 days on our drop, and we dropped them this morning. These students had all been contacted, I don't know how many times. I mean, countless times over 15 days. Didn't answer, didn't return calls. Don't get on their classes with their teachers. They have just disappeared. She was able to, from 11 o'clock when we met with her until I checked my email, and got a last message about 5 o'clock from her. 2 of the students have enrolled elsewhere. 3 of the students have already contacted the school to re-enroll. And she's got 2 others that she's working with on getting some of those needs met, and I think we'll probably get an email from them tomorrow, so. I don't know if Pathways to Potential is focused on K-5, but she really is stepping up in a big way, K-12 for us. Like I said, those students that we had put on the drop list this morning, we have called almost every day for the last 2 weeks, and I think they see the school's phone number and they just choose not to answer. One of them has a high school sibling that has been involved, and an elementary sibling has been involved, and he just has checked out as a middle schooler. And they're just struggling with internet, and the older brother is, taking it, and the little sister is, taking it, and the middle school kid's just going, okay, I guess I don't have to. And so she's really helped a whole lot, in that regard with that one particularly today. The systems work that I wanted to talk about tonight, you had a presentation on with Mr. Nason and Mr. Fricky. They've done an amazing job with this EWIMS process. They have put in, when they kind of joked about like the countless hours. It is countless hours. I mean, they're using BCS time twice a week with their group, and the 2 of them are probably putting in as much preparing for it, getting to that point. We spent 2 hours online with Manistee. We spent an hour online with Shiawassee. They've got great questions for those people and have gotten some great help. It's been really nice to let them take it and run. I get an update regularly, but it's also really nice for me that I totally trust what they're doing. It's great to just sit back and watch them lead. As far as processes and leadership, for me, they go kind of hand in hand this month in bringing kids back into the building. We had put together, I thought, a pretty solid plan for getting kids into the building. I don't know how many times I walked through the school day from getting on the bus until I got home in those weeks leading up to bringing kids back in the building. And I talked through with the staff, and they pushed back on things, and nope, this is how we're doing it because it makes sense to do it this way. And we got through day 1, and they came to me as many individuals and as kind of a collective staff the next morning and said, we got a couple things we're gonna adjust. and to their credit, they didn't come to me and say, because it's gonna be better for me or easier for me, but because it's gonna be easier for everybody and make life easier. Breakfast in the morning, you guys are rock stars. Food service is doing phenomenal work right now. We're bringing all the high school kids in through the commons area door. And the first day we were sending middle school kids up through board office door to class, and then they were coming down and getting breakfast later. And we talked to food service and talked to teachers, like, we can do this all at once. And now we're getting all those kids in and getting breakfast in their hands and getting them in class in 10, 12 minutes. As long as buses are dropping them off and getting on the sidewalk. It's been pretty quick. That's not how I envisioned it at all, at all. But to everybody's credit, they've really, they've seen those little things and they're really good about making adjustments. So with that, we are rolling. The marking period ended. We're taking work from students for the 3rd marking period through spring break. So if they have any work, they get turned into us by the 5th. I think it is Monday the 5th. Teachers will grade that and we'll run a second report card, an updated report card. I think on the 15th is what we're gonna do. So, give those kids a chance to get any work caught up on. We know that we had some that struggled with connectivity and just connecting with us. And now that they've been in class a little bit, they're getting the hang of it. So I want to give them an opportunity to improve those grades. But with that, I'll take any questions you might have and hopefully answer them for you.
Questions?
Yes, sir.
How is our senior class looking this year?
Small. Small. We have 20? Can't remember off the top of my head. Seniors. We have a couple that are going to fall a couple of credits short of graduating with their classmates. We have a couple that have been playing catch up since their freshman year, and they're just not quite there. The two of them that I'm thinking of, if they take advantage of all the opportunities we're giving them with intercession time, and we've got a plan with both of them to come in when seniors are done to just spend the day in the office and work on some credit recovery, they should be done with credits, midsummer. And be good by the time the fall gets here and not have to come back to them, again. They're so close, but they both dug a pretty good hole as freshmen. They were digging out, but in general, senior classes, I think they're glad to be back in the building, and they're starting to talk about things like graduation.
Yeah, that was gonna be some of my follow-up.
Yeah.
Conversation. So how are we communicating, because I was just thinking, like, it's March, and usually in a regular year, this is the kind of conversation we get, we try to figure out how many graduating seniors we have, like, what's gonna be the plan, and just how is that plan communicated, because this is what we'll hear. We'll hear that there was no plan,
Yeah.
maybe my kid didn't have these credits, so how are we communicating, especially for those kids who are
We audited.
extending
We
into the
audited their
summer?
credits in the fall, and we sent certified letters home to all those kids that were close back in October,
Okay.
I believe, and then another one went home in January. Mr. Nason's followed up and met individually with all the seniors. Well, he's scheduled to have met with them multiple times. Some of them have blown him off a couple times. But they've gotten, phone calls, certified letters, meetings with him. They're the one senior was very surprised that they're behind. And when we finally sat down, we're like, how were you surprised? We told you this last year, and we told you this, you got this certified letter, and you got this certified letter, and you blew off 2 meetings where we talked about this. Well, I thought I'd be able to get it all done. That's what we've been trying to explain to you all along, that you're off pace, so. Yeah, they've been told, and I'm sure we'll hear that, from a couple of them. that-
But we need to make sure
Oh, yeah.
that,
Yeah.
that we hear that, so when
Yeah.
we're asked,
Oh, yes,
we have the right
absolutely.
information.
This should not be a surprise to any of them.
Thank you.
Yeah, not be surprised to any of them.
Awesome. So then I'm guessing since seniors and then hopefully the senior advisors starting to have conversation that next month possibly you'll have some graduation information about
Yes.
virtual, not virtual.
I
Outdoor,
am planning to
in-person.
I'm planning to have some sort of in-person regular, and we'll have a plan B because who knows? Who knows what's gonna happen? We'll start, I got the folder out this morning to start looking at graduation stuff, so we'll have a plan to do it. We'll probably be a limited guest list, I'm guessing, based on what the state says we can, have in one place at one time, but we'll have a backup plan B just in case, because
What is the date?
May 26th?
I want to say the 27th.
27th.
Thursday?
Memorial Day.
Yep. I just looked at next year's calendar too, and now my dates are all off my head. It would be the 27th.
Yeah. Yeah, as soon as we can get those dates out about all the senior activity stuff.
Yeah, it will happen quickly once we get back from spring break, so.
Absolutely. Oh, so will we have any intercession for high school students or junior high?
Juniors
students?
and seniors,
Juniors and
we
seniors.
invited juniors and seniors for intercession. I think we have 10 or 11 right now signed up to come in. It's just credit recovery for those kids. Try to make sure they're not slipping too far behind.
Hopefully those two that will show up.
Oh. One of them's on the list.
All right. Give that to Ms. Mercer, she can call. Oh, the other thing I want to say about Ms. Mercer, so just the communication line. So I heard you say like 2 are not even enrolled here, right? Like dropped. So in my mind, I'm thinking, gee, that information usually goes to the central office because someone's requesting records or.
We got the record request while I was up in the board office this morning on one of them.
Okay,
And when she contacted the other, they were on the road apparently,
okay,
going to enroll. So I haven't seen that second
Okay.
one.
okay. Because it sounds like Ms. Mercer is going to be getting a lot of information about our students. I'm just worried about, and it's going to be district-wide.
Yeah.
I'm thinking it's going to be district-wide. So how does she get that information back out to the people who need to know that? It's just kind of I'm thinking how that's gonna work.
I know, like, Tim has a standing meeting with her every morning, for our building, and that seems to be working right now. Now, eventually, depending on how this scales up, right,
Right,
it could become overwhelming, and then we have to look at it.
because right now, is she just
Right now,
dealing with this building and it's kind
her
of
her
specific?
focus is K-5,
Okay,
that's what the grant has her
Okay.
measuring the data around. However, she can assist, pre-K through 12.
Okay, so check in with me each morning, and then Friday at 1:00. So we'll make it,
because just, I just think about, you gave the example of the, propane case. It could be a multi-family where there's one in each building, one here, one junior high, one high school, and we're not knowing how, and then you know, and sometimes kids don't have the same last name, but they live in the same household, so I'm just trying to, just thinking about how does that.
well, it's a good question, it's very typical of our work. So what our principals expect both Mr. Picking and I to do is we're communicating constantly. So immediately as I'm working with a family, I'm making sure we have siblings, Mr. Picky's on it with me.
Okay, great,
So,
awesome.
where we can do that kind of communication between buildings.
Awesome. Which is great because, I've been around for a long time and, this is so exciting to be here at this moment. I said it earlier, to see the bridges being built between the buildings between, 5th grade to 6th, 8th to 9th. That's just been one of our hardest things to do. And having the staff that we have now, the leadership we have now, and all these initiatives and programs, it's like we're really starting to be able to link, everybody and families together. So awesome. Thank you for both of those reports. Was there any other questions before I let Mr. Cornwell go?
Well, I'll just say thank you, principals, for their reports.
Thank you. Great information. So we have a lot of information when you get cornered in a grocery store.
Absolutely.
About what's going on. Okay, is there any communication from the community? Whatever you consider the community. So I'm sorry, so I'm used to asking virtual, so I have to ask. There are community members in the audience as well, so please forgive me. I haven't done it in so long, I'm forgetting that I need to have you call card and all that good stuff, so please forgive me, please state your.
Hello, my name is Robert Watkins. I am co-chair at the high school. This is my 41st year coaching here at Baldwin. Been in the community and got some concerns, or I won't say concerns, but I would like the board to consider. Haven't heard anything about millage coming up. I don't know if that's on your future agenda. This past fall, football team had to forfeit 3 games because of eligibility. First time in my 40 years that that's ever happened to us. We took half our practice and had tutorial set up. The superintendent set up the Wi-Fi for us. Did everything we could to try and get those grades up. It didn't happen, so we ended up losing those last 3 games. Extremely frustrating and embarrassed as a community member and as a coach of all community schools throughout the community and our district. But as they say, get in where you fit in. My concern at this point, and I'm encouraged by the presentations that I've heard, what you're doing towards the educational aspect of it, but we haven't done anything or said anything about the structural side of it. And I look back and people that I've talked to and I've tried to encourage to come out to vote, and that's what we're doing. We're asking them to vote for a millage, but there's a lot of mistrust. There's a gap between the community when it comes to this district. Internally here, you seem to have it together, but it's not being communicated out there. And as you said, you get bombarded in the grocery stores or whatever it is, and they do a blanket statement as far as why and this is happening and the school don't care and they're dropping the ball on this. But I would like you guys to consider setting up a community action group that will help develop some partnership with the school district and the building. It doesn't have to have much to do with the educational aspect of it, but it would help us to determine what we need to do to get their votes. And it would build some trust, and it would hopefully enhance the number of people that be educated as far as what's going on, so that they can go back out and communicate to other people, which then, and I spoke with the superintendent about my thoughts last year, but then COVID hit, so I understand why nothing went forth, but I believe last year you guys spent some money on a boiler. None of that was communicated to the community. So when we ask the community to vote for a millage, first thing they come up and says, what happened to the money that you guys did? You already did. Well, the more you can say to them, these are the big ticket items that we bought. Then when you get those negative people out there who's always got some lie that they will spread, you can combat it. And it may even be a question of putting something in the paper on a regular basis, what we need to work on. I know the driveway over here, where we have the overhang, the walkway, that pole has been bent for over 8-10 years, seems like. And it's one of those situations where that's the person you see when you come into the building. So when we don't do things to fix those little things, they turn into big things later on down the line. I am more than willing to work and try and find volunteers to work towards the village to try and answer those questions. I believe the last couple of times we've lost by less than 100 votes. But I also can tell you, I know about at least 50 people that didn't vote. And when you ask them why didn't they vote, they said they forgot about it. Well, to me, that's lack of ownership or lack of concern. And it's like it's there when it's there, but if it's not there, they don't make it a priority. And my goal is for us to find a way to lessen that gap and get people to have ownership in our district and in our community. It's almost a sense that I feel obligated. And that is what we need the community to feel obligated. You see villages passed in districts that have high education level of the community. We don't have that. So we have to educate our community to what we're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish. And yes, we're going to make some mistakes along the way, but we still need to put forth that effort. And right now, you guys have a closed circle. Unless you come here, unless somebody stands up here, they don't know. So again, my request is to have you guys discuss it. I know you won't have an answer for me tonight, and I don't expect an answer. But just give it some consideration. I was surprised that the millage is going up for the special ed, so I don't know if it's too late to get under May, but maybe something in the fall. Maybe need more time to try and figure out what we got to do to get more people to feel obligated. So, on that note, I'm waiting for basketball.
Well, I was gonna say, if you stay to the end of the meeting, you might hear about one of your questions that you had, but we'll send you home with a memo. And you can have the answer, but thank you. And the two things that I did hear you say, you're about the millage and the community action group. So thank you for your comments tonight. Are there any other comments from the community? Anyone else here? Oh, I'm sorry. State your name, ma'am.
I'm Bernadine Miller, and I'm an in-house sub here at Baldwin Community School. I sub middle school and high school both. And I consider myself an advocate for the kids here. I went to school here and I graduated in class of 1989. And I just noticed a lot of different things different about how we used to feel, like Mr. Watkins said about the community being more involved and parents coming to games and parents just being there for people and students and actually being a parent to each and every student, we don't see that anymore, but it's probably because we don't grasp them. You know, my mother and some of the other older people around here, you know, they would love to vote, you know, but all they hear are negative things about our kids, you know. But I'm always an advocate for them, and I do try to encourage them, you know, well, vote for them anyway. I know that we're gone, you know, all of your kids are gone. You know, you're a grandmother probably in 5 generations now, you know, but you have at least one grandchild that still goes to the school. You know, I have a nephew that goes right here to this elementary school, you know, and he'll be in middle school next year. You know, so I just think that we should, you know, at least try to encourage some of our older people, because I know if we get a lot of those votes, especially for villages and things like that, and, you know, and just encourage them and let them know what our students are doing. You know, I don't see a lot on the news about how our kids are, they're enthused about, you know, the school or coming back, or they're happy about, you know, not being virtual anymore and being face to face. You know, I mean, I have older people all the time asking me questions like, well, how are the kids feeling now? What's going on with them? Are they happy? Are they mad? Are they sad? I don't hear anything on the news really. You know, we probably just need to maybe make more announcements about the status and how our school is actually doing. You know, and another thing, our kids come to me a lot about a lot of things that they're confused about, like their studies and their curriculums and things like that. I really don't have anything to give them, because I don't know what the curriculum is supposed to look like for all the classes, you know. But, you know, I sub for the ones that, you know, I'm assigned to sub for. And when I do, I try to go around and I try to make sure that everybody's, you know, logged into computers, doing what they're supposed to do, you know. But for some reason, you know, they just complain about nobody caring, nobody trying to assist, nobody trying to support. We don't get any help, you know, and that may or may not be the case, but I think we just need to look into it more. You know, just check on them. Hey, how are you doing here? What's going on? And some of the board members, like before we got out on COVID, I remember Miss Washington coming up there to the middle school a couple of times. Kids didn't even know her name. They didn't know who she was. Who's the lady that's coming in here? You know, and, you know, I introduced her and, you know, oh, she works for the board. Well, what do they do on the board? You know, they don't know what the board's about. They're like, what's the board and what's the board meeting and who are these people? You know, so, hey, come on in and talk to the kids, engage, tell them about yourself a little bit and ask them some questions. They'll tell you what, you know, they'll tell you how they're feeling. They really will, you know, so I'm just like an advocate for the students. Not only am I a sub, you know, and I love what I do, but I'm an advocate for them too. You know, and they do have feelings and they do want to be heard. You know, they just feel like they're frustrated. We all are. We've all gone through a lot. We've all lost a lot of people. We've had a lot going on, but they really do want to hear from someone. So that's all I have.
Well, thank you, Mrs. Miller. If you stick around, then you'll probably hear some solutions to some of the things that you may have said as well. Trent, are you there?
Can you hear me? My name is, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Well, I put things in chat because I didn't know if I could address the board because I live out of town. But I'm a taxpayer, you know, in the community. I do come to visit when I can. Didn't come last year because of COVID, of course, and who knows if I'll come this year. I have family members that do attend Baldwin Community Schools. I attended Baldwin Community Schools, and I'm hearing some of the things that from the community members. I do know one of the community members. We went to school together way back in the day. Probably doesn't know who I am now, but at any rate, I hear some of the concerns. And I also have put in the chat about like the curriculum, like the young lady said, like, what is the curriculum? I have tried to, over a couple of years ago, I tried to support my students in getting curriculum supports and resources that would enhance their curriculum. And I directly email their educators, and I never got any responses back. And because I do look in Power School, because I have access, I still see that they are struggling. And so my question is that how could I get information? I mean, I get information about the curriculum, but it's just based on like what their parents know and what they know. But I would like to know, like, what is the curriculum that is being used for reading and math, because I'm willing for my students, of course, to, because, they're my students and I'm not asking anyone for any monetary support for that, but I can buy licenses and I've been an educator for over 40 years, from pre-K to adult in many settings. So I'm very invested in their education. I don't want them to feel like I felt when I was in school. I just wanted to get out the place. I was bored a lot in the school. I didn't have behavior problems, but I do know that students do have behavior problems when they're not engaged, or when they're bored, or just not feeling like they're welcomed. And like they were saying, like if their families are not welcomed or feel welcome, then they will disengage as well. And I'm not saying I'm not saying that as a fact or not. I'm just saying that we do know that those things do happen. And so I'm just hoping that there is a community action group that does talk about what things are being addressed by the board. And it's just the community as a whole will have buy-in to what needs to happen. And also I'm encouraged to hear about this EWIMS. I've been taking notes, and that the potential restorative justice piece that will come out of that, with the maybe more circles in the classrooms, or however you choose to do that. I know that is a big engager for students as well, and that can also possibly spill over into the home and into the community as well. So I did, like I said, I put a lot of things in the chat. I don't even remember what all they were, but I would like to know, if at all possible, what is the curriculum for ELA and for math, so that I can get the proper supports to my students, so that I can get licenses for them to do the resources at home. I did, purchase a computer for one of my students, because I felt that they needed an upgrade. And I don't sit in a place of privilege. Please know that it's not from a place of privilege. It's a place of, they need to be progressing, and whatever I can do to help them progress is what I'm going to do. And so, I can set aside something to get them what they need. And if I can't, I have come to the school and I have offered to provide any kind of resources, from where I am. The school district I work in is not perfect in any way, because no school district is. And I sit in a school district of 55,000 students. So we have a lot of interventions. We have a lot of things that, I'm more than willing to provide for other students that I can share, with the class, not going against any kind of rules of the state or anything like that. But I just want to know how I can best support my student, and maybe some of those things can spill over to another student. Possibly they can help another student with something that they learn, and then that will create a bigger community of education enhancement, and a feel good about yourself. Because I know they don't feel very good about themselves right now, and some of the things that are going on in the school. And again, I'm not faulting anyone. I'm not blaming anyone. I'm just saying these are just things that, I want to support them on and support them in, so that they can get the education they can get, and they can get be the best community members that they can be where they sit right now. And then as they move on, they can do even a good. I'm more than willing to be a part of any kind of support, again, as far as because I do know other people who have property there that pay taxes, and they would probably be willing to say, hey, this is what's going on in the community. I know you've been away for a while, but let's get back into it. Let's see what we can do. As a matter of fact, some of us are forming a group to be able to come back to the community and do some things like that after COVID, as summertime approaches, where we can do life skill classes and educational programs and things like that. So I'm just throwing it out there that I know that everyone can need some support. Everyone needs some help, and whatever I can do to support and help, I'm more than willing to do. And, in my household. So thank you for your time, for hearing me. And again, this is not I'm not a pointing a finger, blaming or anything. I'm just expressing how, things that I can do. And also just, I'm gonna throw out too, like, in a school building, what we do know is that there are people, they call them ESPs, and they're called educational support professionals. And those are, there are 9 categories, they call them 9 families. So it's interesting that even in the education support system, they call each group of individuals that work in the school that are not operating as certificated educators as a family. So whether it's food service, career tech, custodial, all those things, they're considered families. And so just being sitting in that point of a place at one time in there too, I feel like I'm in a family of individuals in a school. And that and just so there's a conference every year, if you know any ESPs want to go, I think it's still open for registration and free because it's virtual. So but just know that I sit in a place of being in what is called a family, and as I'm working in the school. So just throwing it out there to you. So thank you again for your time. I really appreciate you listening to me.
Thank you. We would need to have your name. I don't know if you can put your name and your address and your email address and phone number in the chat. And I don't know if that chat information, because we would need to collect your information.
Absolutely.
Trent, is there any way for us to be able to see that information and write that down? What we'll do, thank you for your comments, and thank you for supporting your students and wanting to support the Tide District. So what we would like to do is get you connected with our building principals, and they can provide you with the curriculum information based on the building. So elementary, what curriculum they're using, and what curriculum is being used in junior high and high school, so that you'll be able to help support your student. They'll provide you with the, some of the other information that you spoke about.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And we'll get in contact about the action, community action group too. Thank you. Trent, is anything else out there in virtual land that we're not able to see? Discussion and action items.
All right, so we're trying this a little different this month. We'll see how it goes. We usually have a discussion area and then an action area. But what we've kind of discovered is in discussion, we don't do a lot of discussion. When we get to action, we start to have a discussion. So we thought, well, let's put them together and give it a shot and see how it goes. So we'll give that a shot. So consent agenda items, we already had the resignation of Mrs. Melissa Johnson. But then we added a few more items, and I will go through those. Mrs. Johnson was with us since 2013. She has accepted a position at TBA ISD, so we wish her the best. She's a very good teacher, and we are sad to lose her. She's one of those third grade people we were talking about earlier. So sad to lose her. Consider a donation from Rotary in the amount of $2,000. And consider a donation from the Fremont Foundation in the amount of $1,500. Those are both earmarked from those organizations for classroom library supplies. So that's very cool. And consider the contract for Mr. Dwayne Roberts, Baldwin Promise Authority Director. Normally this would come when all the other contracts come, the other administrative non-union contracts. The Baldwin Promise Authority took a long time to go through Mr. Roberts' evaluation. They finally completed that, and we finally can present that contract. So he will get the full raise. It won't be retroactive, but he will get all of the money that would have been retroactive through the rest of the year. So he's not going to get one lump sum. It'll just be factored into his final payments for the rest of the year, just to give you that information.
Consider assigning a board member, Mr. Carter probably, to attend virtually the West Shore ESD General Fund Budget Hearing on April 13th, 2021. Right now, we believe that's going to be virtual because we're limited to 25 people in a setting. That could change and it could end up being in person, but it is most likely going to be virtual because they can't have more than 25 people, and if they have multiple people coming from each district, that's gonna put them over that.
Because it's
So,
usually two, isn't it usually two?
Usually superintendent and the treasurer. And, I don't know if we want to take action on those first two first and then just focus on the discussion of the last two, because those won't necessarily have actions applied with them.
We can't do that. We can do that. So are there any questions about the resignation of the third grade teacher or the donations or anything concerning Mr. Roberts' contract that the Baldwin Province Authority holds?
And the reason number 2 is not part of consent agenda is because we actually have a resolution.
Yeah.
to fill in with that.
All right, then there's a motion to accept the consent agenda items.
We'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda items.
Been a motion by Mr. Carter. Is there a second or support? Second by Mrs. Martin. Is there any questions or comments to the vote? All in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion carried.
We do have the other 3 online as well.
Can they hear me? We have Mr.
Aye.
Mr. Brooks. And Mr. Jones and Mrs. Hill, is that an aye or a nay?
Aye.
T. Jones, Salam. Motion carried. Thank you. Forgot there's 2 on there. And Mr. Brooks, yeah, he said aye first. I forgot I didn't realize they were on there.
Using new world.
Blended thing here. Thank you, ma'am. Okay, so, discussion item 2, 3, and 4. Or
We
3
can
and
take
4.
action on 2.
We don't have to do action on 4 though, on 2. Because we already have a resolution for that. And we already do that anyway.
Somebody's got to make the resolution.
Oh, okay. Is there a, motion concerning, assigning the board member to attend virtually the WESCSD General Fund Budget Hearing on April 13th? Okay, the Marys did it. So Ms. Peasky made the motion. Ms. Martin seconded the motion. Are there any questions or comments to the motion?
Are you adding Mr. Carter on that? Is that?
Yeah, it's gonna be for Mr. Carter. Madam Secretary, we're gonna need a roll call vote, so we get everybody in.
Okay. Let me get my little sheet. Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Aye.
Mrs. Hill?
Move to the next one.
Mrs. Hill?
You can come back at the end.
Okay. Mr. Jones Salam? Mrs. Martin?
Aye.
Mrs. Washington?
Aye.
Mrs. Peasky, aye.
All right. Motion carried. Okay, now we can go to 3?
We can go for it.
Okay, moving to 3.
All right, so the topic for number 3 is consider a direction for the district regarding trauma, equity, and all achievement overall. And I want to go back and talk a little bit about the work we've done with Jim Henry. We've been working with Dr. Henry basically for 3 years now. He's from the Childhood Trauma Assessment Center down at Western Michigan University. And those of you who have seen him in action, he can work with kids in ways that are just mind-blowing, and he can break through. It's very cool, and he focuses on the trauma and, you know, allows us to go along on that journey with him. The feedback from staff, from principals, families has been very positive. So we're going to continue to work with him. He's one part of what we want to talk about. The other thing I want to talk about is the idea of equity, and I want to show you this book. I've talked about Dr. Dominique Smith a number of times, and some of you saw him on the MASB annual leadership conference last fall. And what we've learned, and we've got a core group of folks who are meeting with him on a monthly basis to really gain an understanding of equity, because what we learned when we saw him in November was what we understand as equity is not necessarily equity. And he showed us some graphics that we've grown to love about equity, and he kind of refuted them and said, that's not really equity. So we started down the journey, the principals, the behavior folks, the AD, and, you know, just the whole kind of leadership team. We started down this a few months ago, and I'll be honest, and they may chime in because a few of them are here. I have never looked forward to any type of professional learning the way I look forward to this every month. And I never walk away so fired up as I do when we work with him on a monthly basis. So last week, it just happened that Mr. Mangum and I were wrapping up a meeting, and I had my planning meeting with Dr. Smith. So I just asked Mr. Mangum to stay, and we kind of set up what it would be like. And I said, you know, Dominique, we've learned a ton, and you've given us so much awesome information. I said, but what we really need to do is tie this together and really give us a final definition of what equity is. And so we got together last Wednesday, I'm going to say, and he started off with a phenomenal prompt that, I'll just say, he said to us, how much does race affect your life? And we are a diverse leadership team, and we all had different answers. And then he gave us the reveal, and the answer is that it doesn't matter your race, it affects you 100% of your time. It doesn't matter. So this set the stage for the session that we went into, and we really got into equity, because we've talked about curriculum and instruction and learning targets. We've talked about all kinds of things, and as we're going, we're loving it, but we're going, this is about equity. And then, you know, he presented to us over 2 hours that equity is everything you do, and you have to be aware of that. So he went through a few chapters in this over the course of 2 hours, and we may want to think about studying this as a board. I'm not saying we have to, but I'm watering the infield, you guys, to say we might want to do this. But just the work we've done with Jim Henry to understand, you know, how generations of trauma affect all of our kids, affect some of our teachers from the secondary trauma. I mean, it's been very, very mind expanding. And then to go to this and kind of fill in some of the gaps that we have there. And this kind of 3 and 4 kind of do go together. I'll kind of say that. But the ideas that we've been able to gain here and where it's pushed us have been great. So we're gonna have Dominique virtually on April 30th to work with our staff.
And it's a half day, and it's gonna set the stage for the work that we will do next year. And then he's one of our kickoff keynote speakers in August. And I kind of think that we know where he's gonna go with that. But as we all get better and we grow and learn more of, how the brain works, how trauma works, what equity really means, when we bring all this together, Mr. Mangum talked about the relationships earlier and some of the things that they've seen in classes, just some of the approaches that create a comfortable atmosphere. When we get everybody on our team, and that's the board, that's the teachers, that's the parents, that's everybody. When we all get this learning and this training and understand how all this works, because the focus isn't necessarily on academics, but when this all comes together and we get better at the relationships and we understand each other better, and we know how trauma affects people, the scores are going to take care of themselves, because the kids are going to be more comfortable in the classrooms and they're going to want to learn, kind of like what you talked about. We're going to be hearing those concerns and answering those concerns. And frankly, I hear what you're saying, and I know not everybody knows how to interact with things that aren't academic, that it can get uncomfortable. And we've talked about this, I've talked to some board members recently. It's okay to get uncomfortable, and I think some of the work we have to do is going to get us uncomfortable, but to get where we have to get and to be able to help our kids perform better and get where they want to be, whether it's college, whether it's military, whatever it is they want to do, help us guide them there. We've got to do this important work and be uncomfortable going through that process. So my team has been at the table with me with a lot with Dominique. If you guys want to add anything, if you think there's anything I missed.
I would just second what you said. I mean, it is, I look forward to it every month. I've been through a lot of professional trainings over the years. I've given a lot of professional trainings, and this one has been the best experience I've had in my 15-year career in education. So.
I'll second both of those. It's the best 2 hours a month. It's kind of odd though, because you kind of go into it dreading it a little bit, because you're going to get challenged and you're going to get pushed, and you don't know where it's coming from
Or where it's going.
I mean, the prompt he gave us last week was not at all where I thought we were going with the direction we've been making, but it makes perfect sense as you talk about the big picture. So it's a great session. I'm really looking forward to him coming and speaking to staff. I'm actually was working on a requisition to order his book for my staff to do a book study this spring. So I've been blown away. It's been great.
Yeah, I didn't know, were you done? I didn't want to cut into your.
I can be, I don't have to be,
Well,
it's a board discussion item. So,
Yeah, and
I
that's kind of where I wanted
there.
to help kind of to facilitate that, because we have, a mixture of new board members. And really, about 3 years, you've been here for 3 years?
Mhm.
So really about the 4th year, and half the people that are present on the board now were not here, or there's people in the room where, a couple of board members, which was myself and Ms. Griffin at that time, had attended a conference related to trauma. And we immediately saw our students, our kids, our community. And so we brought back, this conversation to the superintendent at that time, saying, hey, we really think we need to start having a conversation about this. So one thing that I've learned as a board member is that, the role that the Board of Education plays, and that's why this is on the agenda today, as a discussion item, so that we understand how trauma and equity and bias, conscious or implicit, affects what happens in the classroom. We want kids to achieve, and Mr. Megan talk about relationships. I think we've talked enough about trauma and enough about relationships where I feel that we should be at
medium intro level of understanding. It's more to it, it's more than the apples and oranges in closing the achievement gap. And what I mean by that, it's a fruit basket, right? So it takes all types of fruits, all types of issues, all types of strategies to get kids to achieve at the level in which we know that they can. And we identify those as addressing trauma. You can assign whatever fruit to that you want. Equity, conscious and unconscious bias or implicit bias. So that's why we're having that discussion today. And it has to be the board's decision to say, that is important to us as a district. That's important to us as a community, that we talk about these things, make ourselves uncomfortable so we can see ourselves, so that we can see our staff, our teachers, our colleagues, and ultimately see our students for not who they may be when they showed up on March 1st, but who they can be, May 27, 2021, when we graduate, some that have been here since kindergarten. So this is very important work to me personally, but I want to have the discussion. I'm gonna give you guys a chance to talk as soon as I stop talking, to ask any questions or try to get some clarification, because when board makes the initiative to do things, you're gonna be asked, why is that important? What does it have to do with grades? And you need to be able to understand and be able to communicate that when you're asked, what does that mean? Why you do that when, this and this is that one? You need to be able to, make that simple connection that, what, if my child has an issue, a communication issue or interpersonal relation issue with the teacher, that's gonna make a difference in what takes place in that classroom today. So the discussion is that we make a decision to move forward, explore that. I think we should start adopting language and behaviors that reflect equity, that's sensitive to trauma, and definitely to address, our own biases about any and everything. And I do agree, I think we should do a book study. So we might as well have Dave go ahead and buy the whole district that book, so everybody can, really, everybody can read it. I'm serious, like Chartwell's, they need to be reading the book.
We got the author who can help us put together good discussion points.
Because, Chartwell's are serving food to kids who are often deprived of food, right? So we don't even understand trauma, the relationship to food and to people and those who serve it. Same thing with Axiom. And if you work here, you're part of this, and you're gonna get in on the book and be uncomfortable with us too.
You'd be surprised how many kids come to the kitchen to talk to people, when they're out running around or something. And we always ask them, how's your day? Well, my day wasn't really good. Well, then, you can kind of know what's going on. So I think we all need to be involved in it.
Any discussion or questions or comments? So do we need to, like, maybe next month, you kind of present some type of resolution? Because I really would like to make a formal action regarding what our district, what we're going to do.
Let's you and I talk about what that would look like.
Okay.
And we'll determine if we do a resolution.
Yeah.
Or, take specific action.
Yeah, I would like to make it some type of official action, and also took some notes. I'm sitting here, this is a really unusual board meeting, but I was sitting here thinking about all of the information that we have received thus far. And I would be interested to see, people talked about school, home, community. They didn't say that in those words necessarily, but that's what they were saying. And we can do all the work, and I hope people out there are still listening. We can do all the work we can while the kids are with us when they arrive here. We cannot fix or address the issues that they have and the conditions in which they live in. So until, those things can be worked on, and that takes community partners to do that. I'm saying that, is it possible to use some Title I funds or any other restricted funds that we have to provide some type of parent community training series of educations with Dr. Henry or anyone like him, associate with him. And I think this will be a good opportunity to bring in Laura Schultz, who is the director of DHHS, and any other community people out there like the Lake County Community Foundation, like the bank. Because what people have to understand, we say it all the time, it sounds like a broken record, but I'm gonna say it again. Schools cannot do it alone. And we're being charged, there's a great expectation that we do, and we can. We need help. So, and the help comes in the form of being able to, we're going about a kid with every intervention, everything in here. But if we're taking Johnny, we're taking Susie, and they're going back home into a domestic violence situation, or they're going back home to any physical or sexual abuse, or if they're going back home to something, we cannot control that. But if we can maybe get some educational services that address trauma, then maybe those parents, those parental units will have another resource that will actually be beneficial to them that they can begin to explore. And, you know, it takes the community, and the community has to take responsibility for its citizens, which are those that are from birth to 18, those ones that we have. They have to take responsibility. And I'm okay with saying that. So if you can make a note to look into Title I funds or to see if that's even possible, what that will look like, and talk to our community partners. But that's something that, you know, maybe we can kick off in the fall school year, because I don't know what else to do. And we hear the cries of the community people, the taxpayers, our own staff, but yet there's just a level of accountability that doesn't rest with us.
No, we can set it up with Dr. Henry and, you know, we can give him some, you know, some guidelines of where we want to go, and he can fill that in, communicate to people. I mean, he's not only good at what he does, but he's also a very persuasive speaker. So if we give him some topics, I think he can work those into good calls to action. For sure.
Okay.
Great segue to number 4, by the way.
Madam President, you know, you say, some of the kids haven't been showing up for school. I had a family call me, first day of school, and, she couldn't send her kids to school because they didn't have any decent clothes to wear. And, you know, and because of this virus, a lot of people lost their jobs, no money to support their kids. And they called me and my wife, and we said, we're gonna make sure your kid go to school tomorrow.
Awesome.
And we got out there and went shopping and sent them enough clothes for everybody in the house to go to school. And that probably is not the only family that's in that position. You know, because of this virus is going around, and everybody losing their jobs. And that could be a lot of reasons why some of the kids are not showing up to school.
That's why we're working so hard with our partners to reach everybody we possibly can. We have lots of clothes, we have lots of toiletries, I mean, we have lots of things that we give out on a regular basis. I know, I think that Mr. Fournier's probably delivered some. I know that Mr. Fricky spends a lot of time delivering things to families to help them out, so. But if you run into that, you know, have them get a hold of us, we're more than happy to help.
I don't mind helping. In fact, we love that way. We love doing that. And, what we need to do is make sure we get out to the community to let them know that there is help for them. Because some of them don't know, and some of them may be too proud to ask for help.
Could be.
See, you know, a lot of kids real proud. They want to be proud. And if they can't be proud, they just as soon not be around. A lot of parents don't want to be. If they can't be proud of themselves, they're ashamed of themselves, then they make their kids feel ashamed. So, but we have to find a way to get to those people that's feeling this way, because they're not gonna go out and ask for help. You gotta take it to them.
how to communicate with everybody is an age-old question.
Yeah.
I've struggled with that for a long time. You try print, website, phone calls, et cetera, and still you don't hit everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Number 4?
Ready for number 4?
Yeah,
All
I
right.
think so.
You know, one of the things you were talking about is families not necessarily taking charge in certain situations. And one of the things, and it's not necessarily deal entirely with this topic, but one of the things that we're starting to struggle with, and we've reached out to the ISD and we're trying to put some things in place, is we've got a Snapchat problem right now. I think I may have emailed some of you about that, or all of you, but it's gonna grow, I think, because we're hearing of these different things that are put on Snapchat that aren't necessarily threats, but might be threats. But a lot of this stuff is happening in the middle of the night, being brought into the school and things like that. But, you know, where I wanna go with this is we bring a lot of students before the board for long-term suspensions or expulsions. And, you know, with Ewen's work and some of the other things we're doing, we're trying to be more proactive in that process. But what I want to get on the table is it's been mentioned before at the board table, try to do more before you bring them to be expelled or long-term suspended. So what I want to throw out is the idea for discussion. There's different ways we can go about this. We could bring any concern that may be leading to a long-term or an expulsion for the board to discuss, and the board may say, let's do long-term, let's expel, or let's look at some restorative practices. Or the administrators, before it gets to the board table, could try some different things as far as some restorative practices and things like that. So we try not to get to the long-term suspension and the expulsion, because we know what the data tells us, the more time kids miss school, especially for suspensions and multiple suspensions, the more likely they are to drop out. We don't want to help create a situation for kids to drop out. Now, there are cases where we automatically have to bring situations, but it's not everything that's automatic. So, I mean, we've had the talk briefly here before, usually after a hearing. So I wanted to get this on here tonight to be able to get some guidance, to share that with the administrative team, to know exactly what the pleasure of the board is, basically. You know, do we want to go the route of doing everything we can before it gets there, or do we want to involve the board in that decision, or a different combination of? And if I didn't make any sense there, tell me that too.
Mr. Brooks?
I'm right here.
Tackle that, because when you start talking, I start thinking about the disciplinary, which. So,
Right. For some reason, can you hear me out there?
yeah, we can.
Okay. For some reason, you guys keep going in and out. Well, for the longest, we had a disciplinary committee since I've been on the board. And that disciplinary committee consisted of 2 board members, teachers that are involved with that student, whether it's homeroom teachers or just some of the teachers that may have placed those students in disciplinary action mode, the superintendent or building principal, plus the behavior specialist. And if it got to the point where the student had so many referrals, the parents were called and invited to come to a disciplinary committee. And if the child was suspended for a time, then we made it so that the child would be reinstated when the parent would show up to the disciplinary committee. And that disciplinary committee would be the last resort before bringing that student before the board. And many times that worked. For the longest, there were many students that we never saw again. But we got away from that. And I don't know why, but it worked. And I think that's something that we should reconsider, to set that committee up so that we can deal with these situations before they even get to the board level. Many times, if a parent or student come before board members in any type of meeting, the foolishness or whatever activities took place that brought that student before that committee would cease. So that's where I am on this subject. Thank you.
Any other comments?
I would anticipate with the EWIMS and the other, with the behavioral specialists, that we would have some decline in, it sounds like already from what we've seen, just from the start of the year, so hopefully that will pitch in for what's going on too, so we won't have as many coming to us.
Mr. Cornwell, we put that back into effect last year. Did we run into where a lot of parents weren't showing up? Is that what got frustrating?
I believe we had 4 scheduled, and I think we had 1 parent show of the 4. So it's an afternoon and evening of sitting, and looking at each other, knowing all the information, and not having the person there that you need to really have there.
And at some point, the kids are being disadvantaged by that because they may be ready to come back. And the parents aren't showing up to help them get where they need to be.
And we didn't get to the point where we had kids out and we were waiting for a parent to come to the meeting. We were trying to meet before we got to that. And honestly, I struggle with helping kids out when the parent's not coming to a meeting. I mean, we're punishing a kid for a parent. It's kind of like holding, elementary kids, truant because their parents aren't getting here in the morning. That's a parent issue that I struggle to punish a kid for.
And I think maybe because, we are taking more of a restorative and less punitive approach, just changing the language and not being a disciplinary committee or just some type of restorative committee or whatever. And maybe, doing it that way. We're in the world of Zoom, maybe offering parents the opportunity to Zoom. Here's a link. We're doing only lunch period. If you only got 15 to 20 minutes while you're on lunch, then we will Zoom you, we'll try to do it during that time. I think trying to reestablish that will work, but I think we need it to work as it fits into what we're doing. So it's not like the new, and then we still got this old thing over here, that it's gonna work into our model of everything that, that we are doing. And I know, like, Ms. Peasky said, the EWIMS will help with that. And there will already be some interventions already that have been tried and in place. So the restorative, communities basically, reviewing, here's all these, practices and all these interventions that we have, implemented for this, for this kiddo. What's left to do, and if it needs to come to a board level, then it'll need to come there. But it'll all be documented. The kid will already have been involved with interventions and cycles of more than one intervention. So I can see that. I mean, that puts more work back at the building level. But I think we have enough supportive staff to handle that. If I'm wrong, please chime up and get you more supportive staff, and we will. But then there are things that we just will have to do. The law says we have to, so that's just what we'll have to do. But yeah, I think if we call it something other than a disciplinary committee and establish it to work and what we're doing, I don't see why that can't be a thing again.
Give it a shot.
Any other comments about that? Questions?
Just so we know that the best place for kids to be is in school,
Absolutely.
because when they're not, they're playing video games, and that's not what we need to do. So even though they have behaviors that cause them to, we feel, be out, sometimes I think we really need to work on making sure that we can keep them here as much as we can.
And if we can't, we also have the virtual ability now, which,
Yep.
you know, we never really thought we could do before, but now we know that it can work, so.
Absolutely. Trent, any communication items out there? We're gonna move along to superintendent. We're gonna move along to superintendent items. I don't see any hands in here. Superintendent items.
All right, I was gonna talk more about, bringing everything together with Dr. Smith. I won't do that. We covered that pretty good. I do wanna highlight, our bowling team is doing incredibly well. They go to, I believe, regionals this week with a very good chance to make it to state.
Awesome.
Very exciting. They've had an awesome year. I mean, in league, they just obliterated everybody, so that's exciting. Basketball, I think, is 10-1. They've got a game going on right now. We should be live streaming it. They're having an exciting year. They play in districts. Next week, we get a bye because we were the second seeded team. So we play Thursday, the 25th. We play Saturday, the 27th. Times are to be determined. We do have that we 6th and 27th, and the district final would be the 27th. So we will be communicating with the host of the districts to talk to them about possibly pushing things back. We've talked to both coaches involved, and we'll try hard to make things work because we have 3 bowlers who are also basketball players. So, I mean, it's exciting and awesome, and it's a great challenge to look forward to. So there'll be more to come on that. Update on the millage, we referenced that a couple of times this evening. I originally had our friends from Wolgast and IDI scheduled to come tonight. Thank goodness I changed them to next month because we probably wouldn't get out of here till like 10 o'clock. But they're going to talk to us about the different timelines we can look at and some different ways to look at the financing of bonds. So we'll hopefully have them be the focus of the presentations next month and get a plan. You know, I want to get all 7 board members on the same page, get a plan together. I'll look to that community action committee. I mean, if we could get the community action committee to start up with just our support, I think it would gain so much more traction than if we actually let it. So we'll explore those possibilities. But you know, you guys, it's been a crazy 2 weeks. It seems like it's been like 4 weeks and 2 weeks, but it's awesome to have everybody back in school, to be able to see everybody, to be able to meet with most of the board live tonight. But you know, it's really good to be back, and we have heard lots of positives, and that's great, because I know leading up to coming back, there was a lot of anxiety, and you know, credit to the crews who worked with all the staff members to make sure those procedures and policies and ideas were in place. And when things went awry those first couple days, we were able to tweak things quickly and make them work for everybody, and it's been very positive. So thanks to you guys for your support all year in doing the right things for kids, and thanks to the leaders and the teachers and everybody on staff for making this a welcome back, because it's been a good welcome back. So that's what I have. Thank you.
Awesome. Just if you can make sure that, I still didn't get the young lady's name, and I hate just to call it a taxpayer, but the young lady who wanted that information. If you can make sure that the building principal get her email so they can follow up with her about her questions would be super. Once again, please thank your staff, your building staff, Mr. Cromwell, your building staff, thank them for the Board of Education of having a great start and just getting back in there and just thank them for all the hard work that we know that's going on. Make sure you let them know that we appreciate them. And that's all I have, so I talked a lot. So any board member items for this evening?
I just want to say it was really nice the first day to have all those balloons floating
Oh. That was us last minute thought. But, yeah, I wish we could have did something. I didn't think it through. We should did something planned, but just a little something.
Kids enjoyed them.
Teachers did too.
We'll kick off next year in mighty fashion.
Yeah. Any board member, you got any board member items, Mr. Carter, anything else before we adjourn?
No.
Ms. Mary?
Oh, I just wanted to thank the board for the beautiful flowers that you all sent. After the passing of my mother, I just appreciate you all being so supportive, the calls, the cards, the well wishes and prayers. I just really appreciate you all for that. You were just awesome.
You did give us a card.
Oh, I did.
It is here. Dear fellow, thank you. Dear fellow board members, you are all awesome. Thank you for the beautiful flowers. Love you, Miss Mary. So.
Love you too.
Mr. Brooks, Mr. P.T. Jones Salam, Ms. Tanya Hill, any last board member items?
Nope, all set here.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Brooks, for. All right, well, thank you who virtually attended tonight's meeting. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your comments, for your commitment and dedication to the work of Baldwin Community Schools and its students in the community and its family. And if there is nothing more, we will make a motion to adjourn the meeting at 8:28 p.m.
I make a motion with adjourn.
I'll support it. Washington. All in favor? Aye. Motion carried.